Alright, UFC 291 is tomorrow, and I said I was going to make a video about the press conference, reacting to it, but I didn't upload it because this was probably one of the worst press conferences of the year. Like, what was I supposed to say? Like, I remember, normally I do these press conference things, and I always say to myself, I'm like, man, I always miss something. So this time I was like, yo, let me go write some notes, let me put some notes down. I have one note from that press conference. It was 18 minutes long, the shortest press conference since I don't know how long. There was no content, and this is supposed to be for the BMF title. Two fan favorites. Like, can we get some back and forth? Like, look, I love respect more than the next guy, but just make it a little more interesting. Like, I want to watch this fight. Make me want to watch it. Don't make me fall asleep at the press conference. Like, the responses given by these fighters is ridiculous. Not even Kevin Holland stepped up to cause trouble with all the other fighters like he does at every single other fight week. Only one that made the press conference interesting was Bobby Green and Tony Ferguson, which was the only note I had. And this video isn't really about the press conference. This video is going to be my prediction for the full main card, so tune in for that. I'm going to be talking about it right now, but I want to just review the press conference first. But before we do any of that, I just want to remind you guys to hit the subscribe button, like, comment, and share, because we're trying to hit 20k by the end of the year. Now, this goal would mean a lot to me, so if you guys could just help chip in. I know a lot of you guys watch the channel and don't subscribe, so let's just get into my prediction and my reaction to the press conference. But first, let's start off with the press conference, right? It was last night. It had all 10 fighters on that main card, ranging from Michael Chiesa, Alex Pereira, Dustin, Gaethje, Tony Ferguson, all of them. They were all attended there, and I thought, because this is a pretty stacked lineup, I thought that we were gonna have to see some drama, some back and forth, but yeah, none of that. So I wasn't so happy about the press conference at all. The only thing I did want to talk about was I thought that the Bobby Green and Tony Ferguson interactions were cool. If you guys don't know, apparently there's some sort of drama because Bobby Green texted Tony Ferguson on Father's Day and said, oh hey El Kukui, something like that, and Tony Ferguson just replied Happy Father's Day, pretty annoyed that Bobby Green was like interrupting his Father's Day, and I guess it was Bobby Green's attempt to get into his head, even though I think Bobby Green was trying to say that wasn't really what he was doing. But I kind of agree with Tony Ferguson, like, who the hell just texts that? Like, clearly he was trying to get into his head. But yeah, other than that, I thought that the main event, clearly both Dustin and Justin have mad respect for each other, so you're not gonna really see them trash talking each other, but still, can we make this fight more interesting? Like, come on, dude. I hate these press conferences where it's just the same bullshit over and over again, and just because it was so short. First of all, Dana White couldn't even be bothered to show up, and Kevin Holland was asked like no question. Normally, he is the light of these press conferences. Don't even remind me last time when Dana White cut off Jorge Masvidal on Kevin Holland talking shit at the press conference. I'm getting too mad talking about these press conferences, so I want to talk about the prediction and move on. So that was my thoughts on the press conference. Pretty terrible press conference. Hopefully next month's with Aljamain Sterling and Sean O'Malley is better, because man, I think those two are gonna really go back and forth at that press conference. Both those guys don't really hold back, so it's gonna be interesting. But I want to get into my predictions. As I said, the first fight on the main card is Kevin Holland and Michael Chiesa. Michael Chiesa coming back after a long layoff. I believe he last lost to Sean Brady, and he's gonna be fighting an unranked Kevin Holland. This is another attempt from Kevin Holland to enter into the rankings, and you guys know I'm a big Kevin Holland fan. I think he's pretty underrated. I know he had a pretty bad performance against Marvin Vettori and Derek Brunson, but I feel like he's definitely evolved a lot since then, especially with the takedown defense. I think we're gonna see that on display here. Another thing is I think that Kevin Holland moving to welterweight was a brilliant decision on his part. The power carries over a lot, and he wasn't a big middleweight at all. Like, he probably weighed around the middleweight limit. So I think honestly that this fight is pretty straightforward. This is a grappler versus striker matchup. Kevin Holland's gonna want to keep this on the feet. He's a black belt in jiu-jitsu and kung fu, I believe. And yeah, Michael Chiesa is gonna actually try to take this on the ground. Something interesting I did see about this fight from Terrence McKinney, obviously you guys know Terrence McKinney is another UFC fighter and a teammate to Kevin Holland, is that apparently Terrence McKinney not only is the teammate of Kevin Holland, but his wrestling coach in high school was Michael Chiesa. I didn't even know this, so it's kind of crazy that his friend is now going to be fighting his wrestling coach. But yeah, I think it's pretty straightforward. There's also a lot of talks of Michael Chiesa having a back injury, and at least Kevin Holland was trying some sort of trash talk at that press conference. Like, I don't mean to keep bringing this up, but at least he brought up something with the back and the weight cut being tough. Like, what the hell? Like, this stuff is just not interesting. But I don't mean to keep talking about the press conference. Let me just talk about this prediction. My prediction for this fight is Kevin Holland. Guys, look, I might be a Kevin Holland fan, and I know that a lot of you guys might think that this fight is close, but I think he's gonna get this done. I think his takedown defense has improved massively. The power that Kevin Holland has is severely underrated. Like, we saw him hurt Marvin Vettori. We saw Marvin Vettori go through war with Jared Cannonier and not get knocked out. Not that Marvin Vettori got knocked out. He actually beat Kevin Holland, but still, he hurt both Derek Brunson and Marvin Vettori in their fights despite losing. Also hurt Wonder Boy in their fight. Knocked out Santiago Ponzinibbio, another guy who has a pretty good chin. The guy has underrated power, and especially even at middleweight, he had underrated power, so forget welterweight. So I think he's gonna win this one. I think his takedown defense is definitely improved. I just don't think he's gotten to really show it. In the Hamza fight, look, I know Hamza submitted him in the first round, and I'm not trying to say Kevin Holland was very impressive in that fight, but he did at first kind of defend the takedown. ground. He had a few good scrambles. You could definitely see he's improving on his wrestling, especially training with someone like Terrence McKinney, who has a wrestling background. He definitely picked up a few tricks to keep in his back pocket, so in case this happens again. So I'm gonna go with Kevin Holland on this one. Method of victory, I'm gonna go with KO. I think either in the first or second round. This guy has crazy power, and I think if this stays on the feet, I think Kevin Holland's gonna wipe him out real quick. All right, next fight, Tony Ferguson versus Bobby Green. Now, obviously, this fight is kind of just like a veterans fight, a fair matchup. Bobby Green, you know, kind of gaining a lot of notoriety recently. You know, I would say within the past few years, had good performances. I feel like a lot more people are watching him. You know, obviously stepping up against Islam, that helped his credibility, and that Nasrat performance that happened about a year ago. And obviously, you know, he's had years and years in the UFC, so it's not just like a recent thing. Like, he's always been a popular guy, sort of. I wouldn't say he's been a popular guy, but he's always been in the mix, right? But I feel like now a lot of people are starting to pay more attention to him, especially he's coming out a lot more flashier. And he's going to be facing against Tony Ferguson, a guy who's now on, I believe, a 5-fight win streak, which is crazy. He was literally on a 12-fight win streak, fought Justin Gaethje during the pandemic, and yeah, basically after that tanked his whole career. I would say the highlight since then is that first round with Michael Chandler, where he did pretty well, did manage to cut Michael Chandler with elbows and actually knock him down. Then obviously got brutally knocked out in the following round, and he had some success against Nate Diaz, but that's still Nate Diaz, and I thought he looked pretty terrible in that fight, looked really slow. Guys, I think it's pretty clear, despite what Tony says, he's clearly out of his prime, and it's sad to see because I just think that Tony Ferguson is just in denial. It's sad to see. I think he legitimately thinks he's going to win 5 more fights and get a title fight. I understand what he was trying to say. He's been saying this. He said it in the build-up that he didn't treat that Nate Diaz fight so serious. I could kind of sense that. He didn't really look good at all in that fight. Seemed to just kind of be like, well, whatever. Like, so I could kind of believe that. Now, would that have made a difference? I'm not so sure, but Tony just kept getting hit with punches. And yeah, I think Tony Ferguson for this matchup should probably try to grapple, great jiu-jitsu. And I think Bobby Green, you know, he's gonna have a lot of success with the boxing, with countering Tony Ferguson. So with that being said, who am I going to pick, guys? I'm going to be picking Bobby Green by decision. Guys, look, listen, I think Tony Ferguson is gonna keep it on the feet. He isn't one to go for so many takedowns, so I think it's mostly gonna stick on the feet, and I think that Bobby Green is just gonna have the better of the exchanges. I feel like Tony Ferguson has been way more hittable in the past recent years than he ever was. He's just a lot slower. I think we're gonna see, you know, Bobby Green really have a lot of success in this fight, and I just think that he's gonna out-volume him. Honestly, my guess is maybe 30-27, 29-28, probably 30-27 if I'm being honest. I think this is gonna be a good performance from Bobby Green. I hope he doesn't batter Tony Ferguson, but I just think that he's going to outland him and give Tony a visible amount of damage in the fight. But yeah, I'm gonna go with Bobby Green on this one, but I like the matchup. It's not like we're feeding Tony Ferguson to Shavkat Rakhmonov or something like that, right? So it's a fair matchup. It's a winnable matchup for Tony Ferguson. I think the odds are a bit crazy. I think Tony Ferguson has a bigger chance of what the odds are making it out to be, but still, you can't deny the massive loss streak that he's on. And yeah, so I'm gonna go with Bobby Green on this one. Next up, Stephen Thompson versus Michel Pereira. Now listen, this fight was supposed to happen at UFC 289, I believe. I don't think it was ever told who pulled out. I believe it might have been Pereira. I'm not 100% sure. And I don't think it was ever told as to why that fight got off the card, but it was moved to this card about a month later. And yeah, this is a great match. Obviously, Michel Pereira is an exciting striker. Also has a pretty decent ground game, which I think people aren't paying attention to when breaking this down. And Stephen Thompson, I think, is one of the best strikers, if not the best striker in the UFC, and I think a lot of people hold dear to that opinion. I mean, you look at the fight with Kevin Holland. That's why I picked Wonderboy to win that fight, is because, listen, his movement, his karate, his awkward style, his fast kicks, it's difficult to deal with as a striker. So unless you're taking him down and mixing up the takedowns, he's hard to deal with. So I think Michel Pereira to win this matchup, I think he's going to definitely have to mix in the grappling and get Stephen Thompson really guessing. Another thing that makes me a little bit worried about this matchup, I've been noticing Stephen Thompson's a lot more chinny than usual. Now, obviously, he's 40 years old. He's a lot older now. This could just be, you know, accumulation of all the damage he's received throughout his career. He got knocked out by Anthony Pettis cold, but other than that, he hasn't really gotten knocked out cold like that. And I worry about that because Michel Pereira is a big guy, right? He cuts a lot of weight. He probably has a ton of power, a lot of strange moves that he does. I can see him catching Stephen Thompson, especially if he mixes up with the grappling and gets him guessing. And I think for Stephen Thompson, I think he sometimes lacks volume. He definitely had a lot of volume in that Kevin Holland fight. It seemed like he really wanted the finish there, so I think he's going to have the same mentality, really have a lot of volume. I felt like that's what hurt him in that Gilbert Burns fight. I know that Gilbert Burns had a lot of control time against the cage, but I just felt like, you know, in that, especially in that third round, at one point, Thompson drops Burns. It just seemed like that Thompson wasn't really, you know, looking for that finish. He dropped him with a spinning kick and just kind of let him be. You got to really enter into range. And another interesting thing is that Michel Pereira is a lot taller than him. I don't know. This fight is really close to call, but I think I'm going to go with Stephen Thompson. I don't know. I'm kind of regretting making that choice. That was my choice of going into filming this video, but now that I'm breaking it down some more, I don't know. I'm starting to think Michel Pereira, but I'm going to go with Stephen Thompson. I think he's going to get it done on the feet. And also another thing that I don't like is, of course, this fight is in altitude. I don't mean to keep bringing this up, guys, but Michel Pereira is a big guy. He has gassed before, and Stephen Thompson has amazing cardio. All of that could be affected with his altitude. So just because someone has great cardio doesn't mean that they're going to have great cardio on Saturday. So yeah, I'm going to go with Stephen Thompson. I think he gets it done. I think he gets it done by decision. I think if he didn't finish Kevin Holland inside 3 rounds at that pace that he was going, I don't think he's gonna be able to finish Michel Pereira. I got Stephen Thompson by maybe 29-28, maybe the beginning round. Maybe Michel Pereira gets a takedown, maybe mixes it up a little bit better, and then Stephen Thompson kind of, you know, settles into the fight as it goes on. So yeah, I'm gonna go with Stephen Thompson by decision. All right, so I already have videos for the main and co-main event, so I'm gonna break this down quickly because if you guys want to go check it out, you guys can go check it out. I have a full breakdown of what each fighter needs to do and what I think is going to happen. But for Pereira versus Jan Blachowicz, guys, I picked it already yesterday. I picked Alex Pereira. This one's a bit of a close one. I think there's a lot of question marks, as I said on my video. It's a little hard to predict for multiple reasons, right? Obviously, you know, Alex Pereira coming off of the knockout, obviously that weight cut, coming into a new weight class, how is he going to do? How is he going to handle the power? Even though, yes, he has fought at light heavyweight in Glory, hasn't fought it in mixed martial arts where someone is grappling with him heavier on top, right? And Jan's a big guy, but we saw in the press conference that Pereira looks way taller than him, which is something that I meant to mention in yesterday's video, was Pereira is going to be a lot taller than Jan Blachowicz. But I'm going to go with him. I think he's probably improved in the takedown defense within the last year, working with Glover Teixeira, a guy who has dealt with Jan Blachowicz. And for those reasons, I'm going with Alex Pereira, but it's close. I think if Jan wants to win this, he's going to have to mix it up pretty well and be very smart about it. Otherwise, I got Pereira, and especially if it stays on the feet, I'm going with Pereira by knockout. I'm going to go with Pereira by knockout, though, either way. I think he's going to knock him out in the second round or the third round. And for the main event, Dustin Poirier, Justin Gaethje are going to face off for the BMF title. Now, this was a title obviously held by Jorge Masvidal when he fought Nate Diaz and beat him. And yeah, do these guys deserve the title? As you guys know, I've been saying no. Yes, they're exciting fighters, but Charles Oliveira probably deserves this. He has more finishes, has more exciting fights, more wins, beaten both guys. But they really just, you know, slap the BMF thing on just to make this a really good pay-per-view, just to add value, like this whole thing even makes sense. But I'm going to go with Justin Gaethje. I think the altitude is going to affect Dustin Poirier. If this wasn't with altitude, I don't know, I might still pick Justin Gaethje because I think he's improved a lot from that last fight, a lot more patient, and he's very tactical about how he pressures in. Like, the best example of this was when he fought Tony Ferguson, right? He took his time and almost won all of the rounds. Off the top of my head, I'm not sure if he did win all the rounds or not, but I remember he did get knocked down at one point, but he caused a lot of damage to Tony Ferguson, and I think I'm going to predict Justin Gaethje third round TKO, and yeah, I think he's going to win the BMF title that way. So those are my predictions. Guys, let me know in the comment section below what you guys think, and make sure to check out my videos on Alex Pereira and, you know, the BMF main event, because look, they're a little less than 10 minutes breaking down the whole fight, what each fighter needs to do, so check in for that. Guys, thank you guys for watching. Let me know what you guys think of the fights tomorrow, and I'll talk to you guys about it afterwards. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.